Hello, welcome back to the Autistic Sound Engineer. Today we're going to be looking at the musical properties of aircraft, aeroacoustics, and the idea of helicopter hunter is going out and recording them and what can we do with the sound. Firstly, I'd just like to mention I have been a bit slow with making these videos as I've been struggling with my executive function, as I found it quite challenging taking up this video project, and there's a lot for me to learn while doing it. I do know how to do it, I'm quite good with audio, but it's just the video side of things, editing it. So it's been a while since I made anything. Like my first video is way back in the beginning of July, then that took me a couple weeks to do, and then my next I got loads of footage for Woodland Realm, that took me another few weeks, so I only got that out beginning of August when I actually filmed it end July. But I feel like as I go along, my sort of technical ability is getting a little bit better. Such as I know to have the audio at 48 kilohertz for video, so you don't have any sync issues. I'm going to try and use my handheld recorder to record audio a lot more because the quality on the phone is quite bad, and there's auto microphones. There's absolutely nothing I can do to make the audio manual on my phone because it's just set in an automatic setting, so it filters it and turns it down when I don't want to, as you probably noticed the Woodland Realm as I was doing it on my bike. Also the for filming on my phone is quite difficult as well. There is a manual mode called Pro, but it's annoying because the only problem is sometimes it changes the light if you don't put it on to lock the autofocus. So I've managed to do that as well, and also just thinking about the environment I'm shooting in. So as I go along, it's a learning curve. It's been a bit experimental. I'm getting better, a bit more proficient, and being able to plan it a bit better, realising the steps it takes to do these things and how I can do them. This is going to be a series of trying to go out and record aircraft, and also seeing what we can do if the sounds we record and if we can recompose them. What do I mean by the musical properties of aircraft and aeroacoustics? Whenever you hear something with an engine, a car, an aeroplane, a jet, or a helicopter, it makes its own tone, doesn't it? It makes a sound. The engineering of aircraft is quite important. I'm going to start off with, it's not uncommon for engines to be sound engineered. I know that sort of high performance sports cars, the engine will be tuned, also to be as quiet as possible. Just to be efficient, which is quite an important thing. You save fuel because noise is inefficiency. So what I've been looking into is is this an actual thing? And yes, it is. They do noise readings, partly for noise abatement, so they're not stupidly loud going over built up areas, but also to take an account of harmonic resonances the actual engine and the blades make. They do test helicopters and aircraft for harmonic resonances to make sure if that's part of the sort of aircraft MOT and maintenance they perform on them. Very important to have these in tune because vibrations are quite dangerous when it comes to aircraft, because it can make them unstable, they can start falling apart, and obviously that's not very good. I found an article about tests on a Bell utility helicopter, and it was actually in a harmonic sequence, more or less, give or take a few hertz, but it had the characteristics of what we say the timbre of a musical instrument is, which I found quite interesting in comparison to, say, cars and aeroplanes, is that their engines are quite variable. They sort of change speed, so that gives a different pitch. So a car goes and it goes, but generally helicopters' engines stay at the same speed, and how they steer them and how they steer and control them, they change the angle of the blades on the main rotor and the tail rotor, and again that also affects the sound, but the engine stays constant. On a propeller aeroplane, you have rotor spinning. On a helicopter, you have rotor spinning as well. And what do they do when they spin? So they produce thrust by pushing air through the rotors. As the rotors go through the air, they chop it. So they do that, and so they make a unique sound of that. But also on the helicopters, you get a sort of choppiness as it sort of goes over parts of the helicopter. So as the blades go over it, it does that same sort of thing. as the air particles hit each other or hit a part of the object, and sort of dependent on force and speed, creates a tone or pitch. So anyway, the sort of focus on this is really to do with the aeroacoustics of helicopters. As I said, I have an obsession with them, and I can have the ability to tell different helicopters from the sound that they make and their model, and also how many blades the main or tail rotor has. So it's important to realise, to listen to it not as oh, that's a helicopter sound, but in a really reduced listening sense, as in what's the tone and what's making up the different parts of the sound. Just sort of tear it apart and think about it in a musical sense. With aircraft, I've distinctly point out a few different sound sources to make. The first one, as I mentioned, is the engine, and that makes its own sort of from the exhaust sound. But then you have main rotor, which sort of adds sort of a bass note to it, sort of like a and as it chops through the air. But then you also have the tail rotor, which sort of produces a higher pitch, like a The Bell 212 helicopter is quite a small sort of civilian helicopter, but you're probably seeing it in a lot of sort of action movies with police. It's often an American police helicopter. One off the top of my head is Rambo, the first Rambo film, and when he's getting chased by the police in the woods, and that's a Bell 212, so that makes a chop sound, lower frequency of the two blades, but the tail rotor makes its own sort of sound, which is also similar to the tail rotor sound of an Augusta Westland 109, which is quite a common private commercial helicopter. So that tail rotor sounds the same because it's two blades, but the main rotor is different because it's four blades, so that makes a higher pitch. No, that was a bit bad. Another helicopter with the same two-bladed tail rotor is the AS350 Squirrel. Has a three-blade tail rotor, so that sounds different as well. So that's like a... But that three-bladed helicopter is the same as the Gazelle helicopter, which is used as a scout helicopter in the army, but also for civilian purposes, which has that same sort of sound. But its tail rotor is completely different. It's a ducted fan, so it's like a big fan, and that's designed to make it a bit quieter. So that tail rotor makes sort of a high-pitched sort of gush wind sound, but also with a whine. But it's also similar to several other helicopters' ducted fans, such as the Eurocopter 135 is used a lot by British police forces. It has a four-bladed main rotor, which makes a similar sound to the Augusta Westland 109. How many blades sort of dictates the pitch of the helicopter and the tones it makes. So what I'm going to get onto next is some recordings I got, and I've been quite lucky. I've got the Eurocopter 135, I think I've got an Army Westland Wildcat helicopter, and I've also, this is my biggest achievement, I was able to record and capture an Augusta Westland 169, which I spoke about in my first video, which I said had a tritone in. And it created a tritone note, which is really weird, for a helicopter sound. So you hear this ominous drone of a dissonant chord coming over, and it's an air ambulance of all things. So I recorded that. So let's listen to them now. So let's start with the Kent, Surrey and Sussex Air Ambulance. So it starts off this long bass drone that's off in distance, but when the sort of chop of the blades come in, listen, it's like... Next one, we're going to go for another Westland helicopter, the Westland Wildcat. Another similar one that I only just got the tail of was a Puma, which is similar. It's got four bladed main rotor and four tail rotors, so it sounds similar. There's also some birds singing in that one, quite similar. And now the police helicopter. So you see, it's like you've got that bass note, which is quite the same as the Western Wildcat and the Puma, which is quite interesting. And the final one is Robinson R44, which has that sort of chop chop chop, similar to a Bell 212, which I mentioned. This one was out of the woods. But you can hear there's different sort of qualities there. The Robinson has a two blade in main roads and a two on the rear, and so yeah, it starts to notice the sonic qualities which I notice are different. However, there are a few problems, and I'm firstly going to start up with the recording. Recording on a Tascam DR40 to get these sort of in the distance, sort of fairly quiet, but you do hear them with a handheld recorder is not great because you do pick up a lot of noise to the preamps. So if I'm going to do it more in the future, I need to think about getting something that is a lot more for doing this sort of activity. Also, one thing I do need to mention is the unpredictability. These helicopters can come out anywhere, and it's very sort of hard to keep track of them. Even though you can you can use tools. There's this thing called Flight Radar 24, and as you can see here, I've got a Robinson R44, like the one I just played you. And it's a quite useful tool. You can see where it's taken off from, and you can see where it's landing, and sort of estimate a good place. So it's a bit of working out to do, and you can work these things out. Things Flight Radar 24, you only get half an hour for free, and it's full of ads, but you can pay for it. So that's quite a useful tool. Do you see that? Yep. That is the legendary Bell utility helicopter. Basically, that is what you see in American Vietnam War films. And so it's like that iconic, and it's probably one of the most mass-produced helicopters as well. I think that's over 10,000. I think only second to like the Augusta Westland 109. What it's doing there is spraying bracken in the woods. But yeah, it's very hard to do it, and that was a very rare occasion. That like they only spray it every 5 years, and the helicopter they used was a Bell utility helicopter. And so it does come quite difficult, but there are tools to help you with the trade. And one thing with Flight Radar 24, it doesn't have police or military helicopters. However, you can track them fairly easy. Going to their air bases, like the CH-47s, are based at RF Odiham. Royal Flying Corps, their headquarters in Hampshire somewhere, and also the Westlands factory RF Yeovilton, and one in Cornwall. So you could go to these places and sit in a field somewhere and record them taking off and coming back. And so yeah, that's quite. So there's a few strategies I'm going to play to try and record these in the future. But for military helicopters, they do follow routes, and there is a few routes, and there's an online map. Follow routes into London, specifically along the M3, and the Westland Wildcat I recorded there was going along the M3, and I think that Puma was, I don't know if refueling at Fair Oaks, but that was going along the M3 as well. I didn't realise it was coming back round. So there are ways to do this. A bit of better equipment, a bit of sort of strategy and planning, and a lot of free time to do this. Because I did go out to try and do this, but it does become unpredictable. As I was saying, going out and recording them is quite difficult. It's unpredictable where they're going to come from. As I said, you could use a tool like Flight Radar 24, but it's right place, right time. I worked out that the Kent, Surrey and Sussex Air Ambulance, the Augusta 169, was landing at Frimley Park Hospital, and that does come up on radar, flight radar 24. So I can, if I know it's coming towards, then I could probably sit in the woods somewhere and probably get a good recording of that. Other ones, could probably sit by an airport and record them there. But for military ones, it's difficult because they don't come up on radar and flight radar 24. The Westlands I recorded do go along the M3 up to London, and there is a holding pattern near me over Bagshot, and there's a few others, and there's a map online you can look at. Also, what they tend to do, specifically with CH-47s and Wildcats, they go off at one time of day and come back later, sometimes quite late at night, so that's perfect for recording. But as I said, it's quite difficult doing this, but I hope you took something out of this, because this is quite an exciting part of this project, is going out there, right, let's go and find these helicopters and let's record them. So there's all sorts of different places you can go out and record them. And so what I might do is find airfields. If I have to get permission, I'll do it, but I think there's no harm in sitting in a field somewhere. Or another thing I could do for more commercial ones, like with that Bell Utility one, which I missed, and I'm really upset about it, because that was flying for ages, and I could have got like half an hour recording of it. I would have been jumping and kicking for joy. But I got hold of the operator, which is based in Oxford, and I could probably contact them, ask us, right, I'm doing this project, can I come and record your helicopter taking off when it's going off? And they might be able to give you a bit of information. So thank you for watching.